The game was called the Nightmare Realm. It was a virtual reality game that promised players an immersive experience like no other. The game was set in a dark, twisted world filled with monsters and demons. The objective was to survive for as long as possible and defeat the final boss to escape the game. But what the players didn't know was that the game was cursed. The game was developed by a company called Darken Technologies. They were known for creating horror games that were so realistic that players often reported feeling physical sensations like cold chills and goosebumps. The Nightmare Realm was their latest creation, and it was supposed to be their masterpiece. The game was released on a Friday the 13th, and gamers all over the world eagerly downloaded it. The game had a warning that it was not for the faint of heart and that players should proceed with caution. But most players ignored the warning and jumped right into the game. The game started with a cutscene showing the player's character waking up in a dark, abandoned hospital. The character had no memory of how they got there, and the only clue was a note that said survive and escape or die trying. The player had to navigate through the hospital, which was crawling with monsters and demons. The graphics were so realistic that players often reported feeling like they were actually in the game. The sound effects were also incredibly realistic, adding to the eerie atmosphere of the game. The game had multiple levels, each one more difficult than the last. As the player progressed through the game, they encountered more and more terrifying monsters. But what the players didn't know was that the game was cursed. The game had been created using dark magic, and it had a life of its own. The developers had unknowingly created a portal to a demonic realm, and the monsters in the game were not just computer-generated images. They were real demons that had entered the real world through the portal. The game had a way of trapping players in a virtual reality. Nightmare. Once a player started the game, they couldn't log out. The game would take over their mind and trap them in the game. The only way to escape was to defeat the final boss and close the portal to the demonic realm. But there was a catch. If a player died in the game, they would die in real life. The game had a way of linking the player's mind to their physical body. If the player died in the game, their brain would shut down, and they would die in real life. The first reports of players dying in the game started to surface a few days after the game's release. At first, people thought it was just a rumor, but as more and more players died, it became clear that something was seriously wrong with the game. The police started investigating, but they couldn't find any evidence of foul play. All the players who died had died of natural causes, but there was no explanation for why they had died. The only thing they had in common was that they had all been playing the Nightmare Realm before they died. The news of the deaths caused panic among gamers, and people started to boycott the game. But there were still some die-hard fans who continued to play the game despite the risks. One of those die-hard fans was a teenager named Jake. Jake was a hardcore gamer who had been eagerly waiting for the Nightmare Realm's release. He had heard the rumors about the game being cursed, but he didn't believe them. To him, it was just a game, and he was determined to beat it. Jake had been playing the game for several days, and had made it to the final level. He was confident that he would be able to defeat the final boss and escape the game. But as he approached the final boss, he felt a sense of dread wash over him. He knew that if he died in the game, he would die in real life. But Jake was determined to win. He focused all his energy on defeating the final boss. The battle was intense, and Jake was on the verge of defeating the boss when suddenly the game glitched. The boss disappeared, and the screen went black. Jake felt a surge of panic as he realized that he was trapped in the game. He tried to log out, but the game wouldn't let him. He was stuck in the game, and there was no way out. Jake soon realized that he was not alone in the game. The demons from the game had entered the real world, and they were now after him. He could hear their eerie growls and whispers, and he knew that he had to find a way to escape the game before it was too late. Jake started to explore the game, looking for a way out. But every time he thought he had found a way out, he was met with a dead end. He was trapped in a never-ending maze, and the demons were closing in on him. Jake was slowly losing his mind. He had been trapped in the game for days, and he was starting to feel the effects of sleep deprivation and starvation. He could feel his body weakening, and he knew that he didn't have much time left. But just when he thought all hope was lost, he stumbled upon a strange portal. It was different from anything he had seen in the game before, and he had a feeling that it was his only way out. Jake stepped into the portal, and he felt a strange sensation as he was transported to another dimension. He was no longer in the game, but he wasn't in the real world either. He was in a strange, otherworldly realm. As he looked around, he saw that he was not alone. There were other players trapped in the realm, and they all looked just as scared and confused as he was. They had all been playing the Nightmare Realm, and they had all been playing the Nightmare Realm, and they had all ended up in the same place. Jake knew that they had to work together if they wanted to make it out alive. They formed a group and started to explore the realm, looking for a way out. But the realm was filled with traps and obstacles, and they had to be careful if they wanted to survive. As they journeyed through the realm, they encountered all kinds of strange creatures. Some were friendly, while others were hostile. They had to fight their way through hordes of monsters, all the while searching for a way out. After several days of wandering through the realm, they finally found what they were looking for. It was a portal that led back to the real world. But as they approached the portal, they realized that there was a catch. Only one person could go through the portal, and the rest would be left behind. They all looked at each other, unsure of what to do. They had come so far together, and now they were faced with a difficult decision. Who would be the one to go through the portal? Who would be left behind? In the end, Jake volunteered to go through the portal. He knew that he had a better chance of surviving in the real world than any of the others. He said his goodbyes to the group and stepped through the portal. As he emerged from the portal, he felt a rush of relief wash over him. He was back in the real world, and he was alive. But he knew that he would never be the same again. The horrors that he had experienced in the game had left a lasting impact on him. Jake went on to lead a normal life, but he could never forget about the Nightmare Realm. It haunted him, even in his waking moments. He knew that he had been lucky to make it out alive, but he couldn't help but wonder about the others who had been left behind. The game was eventually taken off the market, and Darken Technologies was shut down. But the legacy of the Nightmare Realm lived on. It became a cautionary tale, a warning to all gamers to be careful what they play. The cursed game had claimed many lives, and it had left a trail of destruction in its wake. But for Jake and the others who had survived, it had also taught them a valuable lesson. The line between reality and fantasy could be blurred, and sometimes the consequences of our actions could be all too real.